Hey.
Okay, it looks good. The connection's looking good so far. Hi, Liz.
Awesome.
Hey,
What was that?
how are you today?
I am doing so good today. It was cool outside this morning, and I opened my windows. There's sunshine. There's good people to talk to. Life is good.
Good weather, good people, good social distancing. It's going well. Alright, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Liz Prisley, and I am currently the executive director of an organization called Heard 'em Say Youth Arts Collective. So I've been an anytime volunteer probably since like 2013-ish, 2014-ish, and worked briefly with Community Tampa Bay as well. Love all of their programs and everything that y'all do. In addition to working with Heard 'em Say, I'm also a poet and an educator. So I've taught writing at places like USF St. Pete, University of Tampa, in addition to poetry workshops and things like that at schools in both Pinellas and Hillsborough. Um, yeah, so that's me in a snapshot.
You're in a snapshot. A lot of, like, Pinellas County and Hillsborough schools, you've done that for, like, a hot minute now, going through a lot of those schools and teaching those workshops. Amazing. Hi, Tammy. But,
Hey. So many people I love in this chat right now.
such good energy. So good energy. Uh, So, Heard 'em Say is your big, basically your front, your face of the organization. That's what you very much stand for. And so, with Heard 'em Say and working with in those Pinellas County schools and constantly before our pandemic right now, having a lot of interaction with those young people, what was that like pre-pandemic and pre all of this experience? And how was that very big in what you do?
Yeah. So let me tell just a little about Heard 'em Say, and then I'll roll into talking about being in schools. So Heard 'em Say Youth Arts Collective is a nonprofit that is dedicated to creating platforms and empowering young people in activism and advocacy through artistic education and expression. So for us, that's largely spoken word poetry. We usually run an open mic on the last Friday of every month. It's someplace called the Inkwell Center in Tampa in Hillsborough County. That has adapted, and so we'll chat about what that looks like. And then our main programs are teaching workshops at Hillsborough County Library locations on Saturdays. Again, also that has adapted. And then we also partner with the Hillsborough County Poetry Jam, which usually takes place in the fall, and then into January is like a big countywide slam for Hillsborough. I would say I have individually done a lot of poetry workshops with media center specialists over in Pinellas, but like Heard 'em Say formally, like as an organization, has done less so because most of our programs are in Hillsborough. Um, so this is also the season where we put together competing slam teams. So slam is like the competitive aspect of spoken word poetry. And we usually put together teams of young people who travel locally, regionally, and even nationally to go compete against other teams of young people. And one of our flagship programs is participating in a big international festival that happens every July called Brave New Voices. So very unfortunately, like many events, including ANYTOWN, Brave New Voices has also been canceled this summer because it's usually in July. And it was going to be in DC, which I think was going to be a whole thing given what's going on in the world right now. And so there was so much to look forward to. And so Brave New Voices is looking into doing a virtual festival of some kind that we're waiting excitedly on the details for to see what that might look like. And they've rescheduled till next year. So yeah, so right now we've adapted to a lot of virtual spaces. Normally what we would be doing is practices with our slam team every Saturday at a Hillsborough County Library location. And then later this month and next month, we would start like multi-week practices in order to get ready for some of those big competitions. So that's also something that has been changing a whole Lot. So let me circle back to question about being in schools. Like that is, I think, my favorite part about what we do, and it's like the most I think high energy part of what we do at Heard 'em Say is being in classrooms and working with young people and being in open mic spaces and on stages in front of other human beings, like all in the same room. And so we've definitely been missing like that aspect to performance poetry, because performance poetry feels really different when you are in your home, like on a video camera all by yourself, than like when you are in a live audience of people who can like clap and cheer for you and chant your name and like tell you go in poet and snap and like all of that good stuff. So yeah.
The energy is a lot more different. It's a lot more, it's different audience because although people may still be there, that energy is not the same, and it's
Totally.
vulnerability almost because it's different energy. You can't
Totally.
anymore. So post pandemic now, because as pre-pandemic was having audiences, that's a community from each other. For sharing such, like poetry can be very vulnerable. So sharing those things is a very big part of it, and having that community. So now, as we are very much, there's no timeline. I can't even say mid-pandemic. There's no
Yeah.
for it. As we are in the whole premise of this pandemic right now, how do you keep those communities and these poets that are joining these live sessions? How do you keep that same affirmation in them? Make sure they feel just affirmed as they would if you had a normal session.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I think the vulnerability is a huge piece of what we do, and trying to recreate that when everyone is in their own home, and possibly in a home where they don't feel safe expressing themselves because of family dynamics, or maybe they don't feel like they have a space where they can go and be alone and shut the door and say what they want to say in a poem, with parents around, with siblings around, if you don't even have that space where you can go to. So like that has definitely been a challenge. And so we've been kind of adapting how we do what we do, trying to keep it just as engaging, but via Zoom right now. So we still have our workshops and practices on Saturdays now on the platform of Zoom. So we try to do a lot of relationship building to better create that space, and then using chat and text functions to be able to say what we want to say that maybe like we don't feel comfortable saying out loud in our home because family and siblings and whoever else is like coming in and out of our home might be around. We just had a slam last month, and so we were brainstorming with young people ahead of time, like, okay, where can you go in your home when you're going to slam? And so some of our young people did like really creative stuff. Like one poet hung sheets from like the fan in her bedroom so that she was like in this enclosed performance area and can kind of do her thing without the distracting background of like what was on her walls. Another teen went into their garage in order to like have some space to be loud with their performance and not disturb their family members. And so it's definitely taken some creative problem solving on that front to like find spaces where we feel comfortable and like safe performing vulnerable work. And then I think just really focusing on the relationship aspect when we're in workshop or practice, checking in on folks. We do like a mental health Monday check-in in our team chat. So like, how are you feeling this week? What level of support do you need? This week in particular, I'm really excited. I don't know if any of my Heard 'em Say teens are currently watching this, but we have a surprise planned for them this Saturday that I'm super excited about. And I will post the details of after it happens.
So exciting, so much like content. Then is it more like not in like a state, because you guys already do a lot, you know what I mean, for these young teens and providing a platform, but are you putting more just activities and more connection building, I guess, because there's no actual physical face-to-face connections anymore? Do you have to push farther to have these types of connections with these teens now, considering that you won't have these face-to-face connections? You don't even long.
Yeah, I would say it takes a lot more behind the scenes planning. So myself and I have an incredible team of 3 other folks, so 2 slam coaches, Zen Christian and Curtis, and we have a program coordinator and mental health advocate, Brianna. And I would say, like, in person, we are amazing at saying, like, someone come up with an icebreaker. Great, you do that one. So much like ANYTOWN world. And then for virtual platforms, like, in order to make some of that stuff translate, it's like, oh, we have to sit down ahead of time and plan out, okay, how do we make this interactive? How do we make sure that the teams are getting the feeling of, like, the activity, even if we're going to have to adapt it to make it happen virtually? So I would say definitely a lot more planning in advance. And then during our workshops, I would say we do spend a lot more time on the relationship building piece of talking about how folks are doing and what support they need, and trying to give them as many tools as possible for decompression and self-care, while also taking care of ourselves too. Yeah.
Very, very like interesting aspect, because I feel like it's very brought over, especially in terms of how people are dealing with online school and stuff like that. It's something people are just thinking about the content aspect of it versus the actual addressing the care, because you don't know how these people are behind the screens. And you have many young humans that you deal with, and you may not know how they're doing because you may not have contact with from outside.
Mhm.
Do you have any humans that you like cannot contact as often or to because of the pandemic right now?
Yeah, I would say we usually engage more young people, like, through our monthly shows, who might hear about it on Instagram or see it on Facebook and walk in the door. Um, and I feel like we lose that foot traffic when it's virtual, because, it's hard to get the word out, and folks might feel more intimidated. Um, so yeah, I definitely think we lose connecting with new people, like, on that front. And then one thing we would be doing right now is traveling to a lot of other programs to perform for them. So usually, like, in April, we would have traveled to Orlando and Jacksonville in order to collaborate with some of the youth organizations that are there. And there's supposed to be a regional slam happening in Savannah, Georgia, with the Deep Poetry Center, and so we missed out on that too. And so I think, like, having connection with other young people outside of just the Tampa Bay area who are engaged in the same kind of work is so meaningful, and that's definitely been one of the things that we've been missing. Yeah.
Especially because, like as you were saying, that and that like regional competitions that you guys have is very much like the ANYTOWN of our community. That was your ANYTOWN of Heard 'em Say. So having that build up like all year with your young humans and stuff like that, having that sudden like takeaway from them that they've been working very hard for, and is their place to express themselves. It's a lot of them, they take it very, very closely to them because that's their
Mm-hmm.
own community. How have you been like not just keeping that relationship bond, but knowing like treating your community, knowing that that has been taken away from them? What have you had to like reassess and like make sure you plan out well or stuff like that to keep that like well known inside your own community?
Yeah, so I would say we're definitely making space for grieving the loss of those in-person functions. So we got the news, I think it was like middle of last week, that Brave New Voices, the big festival, wasn't happening. And so I know, like, I mourned that loss for a little while, and I think a lot of our young people are still mourning that loss, especially the ones who are going to age out. And so age-wise won't be eligible to come back next year if it does indeed happen in person. So I think creating space to say, like, it's okay to mourn that stuff, and we're going to do that together. And then my team and I have been working hard to find opportunities for our young people to collaborate with other young people. And so I know Simba over in Orlando with Exodus United. She runs a youth poetry organization there. They've had online slams, and we're getting ready to later this month, I think on the 20th, collaborate with them for a workshop. We've also been collaborating with Metro's youth groups that Emma, another former ANYTOWNer, runs with Metro's programs. And so we just did an open mic with them a couple weeks ago, and we're going to work with their summer camp program later in June. And so other than that, just trying to find like other platforms that we can continue to get out and accomplish the same goal, even if it maybe doesn't feel the same way as it would have if we got to go to a lot of these regional and international festivals and be in person.
What is their age to age out of that program?
Yeah, so we work with youth who are 19 years old and younger. And so to qualify to compete at Brave New Voices, a youth has to currently be 19 or younger. So they can't turn 20 at the festival. You have to be 19 during the whole festival in order to compete. So most of our young people are between 13 and 19.
How long is that festival for? Because like you do a lot of like regionals and stuff like that, but how long is that specific festival for?
Yeah, so Brave New Voices is a Wednesday through a Saturday of programming. And so depending on where it is around the country, we've arrived either like Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. They put us up in college dorms of whatever city is hosting. And then the festival has like a workshop day. They do things they call town halls that are probably really similar to dialogue groups, but just like more people. And then there's always a community service project of some kind. And then there's actually the slam competition that takes place on one of those days. And then there's the final stage, like so the top 4 or 5 teams from the competition kind of battle to see who the winners are on a final stage. And that's usually Saturday night. And then Sunday is when you head back home.
Oh, that's actually so cool. That's so cute. Like the little,
Yeah.
that's such a cute little like, I don't know. That's so interesting. But so let me see. Yeah, that's very. It's like very parallel.
Mm-hmm.
That's very very cool between the poetry because I'm not very in like put into the poetry. Like I read it, but I don't make any of my own. And I find that very interesting that they have their own like festival, and I think that's very cool. For the like, okay, so for past that festival, when they after they age out of this, is there something further that they can go, or you guys direct them to?
Yeah, so at Heard 'em Say, we encourage our teens who have aged out to stay connected with us. So if they aren't leaving the Tampa Bay area for college or whatever else comes next in their lives, if they're still local, we encourage them to train with us if they want to be facilitators or assistant coaches to come in and help teach workshops or coach slam teams. We often invite our program graduates to come back and feature for us at a later time. So in the fall, we book features for our show. So they get their own like 20-30 minute spotlight set of a performance. And then I would say, so like right now, one of our slam coaches, Curtis Davis, he was a teen competitor way back in like 2007, 2008. And so now that he's in his 20s and grown and matured as a poet and performer and human, he's one of our head slam coaches. And then Brianna, our mental health advocate, she was also a teen in the program, and now a few years later has come back, and we created this position for her because she was so passionate about incorporating mental health and self-care strategies into our workshop programming. And so that has been kind of revolutionary for us in the last few years. So yeah, we try and create as many opportunities for young people to come back and stay plugged into the program if they want to, and then super support all the ones who move away or go on to college or want to build into other areas of their life. And then Brave New Voices has something they call Future Core. So teens who have aged out, who have been going to Brave New Voices for a few years, can come back and be kind of the equivalent of like an ANYTOWN grad being a counselor the next year. So they get to be the staff that actually put on the festival if they want to.
Okay, so you guys, it's still keep integrated. It's not like you graduate and then you go to a next program. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's not really any formalized program that I know of, at least in the Tampa Bay area, for folks who are older than 19. So adult poetry community is relatively well organized. There's a Facebook group called Tampa Bay Poetry where folks post like, here are the shows going on, but I wouldn't say there's like an organized program of any kind.
Mm, I see. Running, okay, so as the executive director of like all of this, you have like a lot of responsibility on a normal day for this type
Yeah.
of now everything suddenly flipped over basically and you're everything this wasn't expected basically at all and now you have almost a double type of responsibility for this because you have everything that was maybe you had planned but now it's not sure if it's going to happen and everything like that's occurring but you still have to run this and like show that it's very stable at the same time because beyond just the community aspect there's also your aspect of running this and
Mm-hmm.
like as you have your other team members supporting you it's still a lot of stress I can like imagine and running this whole organization. How has that like deeply affected you as a person and indeed maybe your personal life and your life doing this? How has that affected you at home?
Yeah, I mean, I constantly worry about how we are doing the right things for our young people. Um, how can we continue to, in good faith, raise money for programs like in the time of coronavirus and knowing that there are so many folks out there whose financial situations have been impacted, but also knowing there's plenty of folks who are ready and excited to give. And so trying to create, avenues for that to happen, trying to adapt our programs and just think about like, are we meeting our values? And so I guess for me, it's about taking our values and putting them at the center of the decision making process to say like, how are we reaching towards empowering young people. If we can't do that in person on physical stages, how can we do that virtually on virtual platforms? And so it's taken a lot of creative problem solving, and it's taken a lot of other community members who have given me amazing feedback about whether it's software or strategies for making things more inclusive, or whether it's folks educating me on ways to make things more engaging on virtual platforms. I mean, it's definitely been a community effort of other mentors that I rely on, folks I love and care about, like Sam or like Emma, who have given me great input. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a toll of extra work, but not work that I ever would begrudge, because I know that at the end of the day, like, our goal is meeting our young people wherever they need us to be. And that's 100% what I want to be doing. And whatever it takes to get there, I'm completely comfortable with. And so, yeah, it's been an interesting ride. And it's definitely encouraged our whole team to rethink like why we do what we do, to make sure that we're holding on to the important pieces and letting go of the things that like we might desperately love doing it, but if it's not feasible right now, like we can't just like give up, lay down and say, well, there's no more, heard him say, which I'm not gonna lie, there have been days I was tempted, but like I think at the end of it, saying, it might have to look totally different. We might have to let go of the things that we loved in order to create new things in this current environment. But like knowing that I do it for the teens that are involved in our program and I love them dearly, like, at the end of the day, that's exactly what I want to be doing.
Doing the work, holding yourselves accountable at the same time, knowing that you're doing something that's very important to you and the young people you deal with. It's good that you guys have that connection with your young people, like having very dedicatedness towards your own work. I think that's what really keeps the connection between
Mm-hmm.
like especially the poets and your guys' work and the young people themselves, especially this time, is that they have a community they can trust and they can rely on and express. I think from how you explained it, you guys you keep that connection, not even because it's like, oh, I have to see them in person. It's, oh, I care about these young humans, or, oh, I know this young human in this way. Is it like, it's, they can participate from 19, or is it like 1 year?
Yeah, anytime between 13 and 19, they can, a lot of our young people come back year over year. So about half the teens that we have in the program have been with us for at least like 2 to 3 years. Yeah.
Oh, so you know them for like a long time. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, and some of them are graduating high school this year and like going off on adventures to different colleges outside of the Tampa Bay area. So yeah, we have the awesome opportunity to stay connected, like year round with the same teens for 3, 4, 5 years, which is super cool because you get to see how they grow and the amazing humans they you know get to be, and all of the cool stuff they create and the growth in their writing and their performance. And that is probably my favorite thing about it.
Yeah, you had anyone from like 13 to 19?
Yeah, we've had a lot of folks stay with us a long time. So one teen, well, she's not a teen anymore. One young person in particular I can think of is Mia Scott. She was one of our first young people, probably in like 2009-ish. And she spent her entire youth going through the program. And then she won a scholarship to one of the only universities in the country that has a spoken word and hip hop focused degree program, called the First Wave program at University of Wisconsin-Madison. So she got a full ride scholarship there from her spoken word poetry and hip hop. Graduated from there and is like now off, doing incredible things. And right now in the program, we have one young person. She is graduating high school this year, and she's been with us. I think this is her 4th year, 3.5-ish. So yeah,
Like the entirety of high school. That's kind
yeah,
of crazy because that's like way different. Because anytime you go for a year and then you're like, oh, I could go back, and then you can't go back. Like you guys have a lot of time with them.
yeah.
And in this, is there like a time you join? Like, is there like in fall you usually join as like for your first year, or do you just join at any time?
It happens year round. I would say we do most of our outreach in the fall, because we have the most free time to do outreach in the fall. So a lot of young people come to us through the Hillsborough County Poetry Jam, which is a one-day program where artists go into schools and in high schools in Hillsborough County and teach like a day-long poetry workshop with a poetry slam at the end. And so that kicks off usually in October. And so I would say like October, November, December is when the most new people join our programs. And then January starts our workshop season. So January through usually March, every single Saturday, we have workshops. And January, February, and March, we have slams where young people can compete to qualify for the team. And then this year we extended that season one more month, since Hillsborough County Libraries closed their locations starting in early March. And so we adapted to virtual workshops like middle of March. And then we're hoping that, hey, maybe we might be seeing each other in person by the end of April. And then that obviously didn't happen. So we did our virtual slam to determine who is going to be on the team, which is like 6 or 7 young people, like who represent the organization as they travel and do stuff. So yeah, this time of year is mostly, we only get new folks at our monthly shows, and then our weekly programming is the young people who started like back in January, February.
Okay, I see. 'Cause I was gonna say that having those new people like come and be like, oh, I'm interested from seeing those shows, and then suddenly not having those shows anymore is definitely taking a toll because it's very hit or miss with like new people in any type of situation because you have to get their attention and like have that same thing that they first walked into and see. It's harder to reach that same type of thing in the organization,
Mm-hmm.
especially like workshops every Saturday. So having that disconnect and with newer people or potentially newer must have been a lot harder, especially if you had, I don't know, have them right now, like just newer ones that have in like your slams or anything like that. But has that been like obviously it like the coming in new people has been a lot. But have you had any like newer people that you've had to have like put more of a connection to because they're very much newer?
Yeah, I would say at last month's show that we did virtually on Zoom, it was interesting because a lot of our longtime audience weren't able to join since it wasn't like the same location, same time. We moved it to be earlier so that our young people weren't concerned about being loud performing their poems in their homes when like families are trying to go to bed. Um, so it was earlier in the evening, and so we do miss out on the folks who would have joined us in person. But at the same time, it was really interesting to see that we got a couple of new folks who had never interacted with us before, saw the Zoom info online, and maybe either the timing was great because they were looking for something to do, or maybe they were just more comfortable joining us for a first time in an online environment where you don't have to like get in the car and walk in a door where it's like a room full of new people. Like you're still safe in your home. And so we actually had like 3 young people who jumped on our open mic at the beginning of the show who were brand new. And I think like one had come to a show before but not performed. So that was actually really cool because it allowed us to reach out in a different way. So that definitely had us thinking about, all right, so how can we continue to engage new people like in a virtual platform and make sure they feel like they can stay connected even if we don't get like an in-person like meetup.
Keeping like that, showing them the intimate space that you guys have on a normal like level, but also being like, oh, this is something that we may be able to keep up doing, because there is, in a like more of today age, there is a much social platform to doing a lot of things. It's just hard to branch out on those. So definitely in that space, because they are in a safer space of their home and not standing on a stage, because there are people that are uncomfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that like aspect of it, of kids or younger people just like knowing that that's their safer space and giving them that platform. Is Have you thought of continuing part online after post pandemic?
It's definitely something our team is brainstorming right now about how we can maintain some digital components and also like not knowing what the future is going to look like and how often we can meet in person. And it may be that coming across new people in person is not going to be our outreach strategy for like the next year or two, depending on what pandemic world continues to look like. So we are definitely brainstorming ways to continue to connect with people virtually. Our Instagram platform has been a really great space where folks can message us, and you know we are working on getting better at our social media posting to stay engaged with folks. I don't know who's in charge of that, but she's definitely going to get on that. So yeah, I mean, continuing to engage folks virtually is definitely something we're talking about, and I don't know what it's going to look like yet. But that's a really good point, and we're brainstorming what that's going to look like.
That aspect of it, I definitely, yeah, because especially like a lot of organizations have to take that virtual aspect of it because they're like, I have nothing else to do. Like that's the only way to do it anymore. And there's a lot of people like in many communities that don't use technology in that way. So I know it's a lot of learning for a lot of different people, like teachers alike, every community, because no one was like, yeah, let's do a gathering on Zoom on a normal day.
Yeah.
Every organization, so especially in, I feel like that aspect of giving that platform area is very new, but I feel like in the future you guys will have, not even all communities will have an aspect of it, because especially like you mentioned post pandemic, we don't know how the world is going to look after this, because one, people are, fear is like a very powerful weapon, and now people are scared of like everything. So even if things open up, people are going to be very wary. It's going to be a way different world than it was pre-pandemic. So having that sort of trying to find more people, like opening up and having your guys's, I don't what is, I can't think of the word right now, but it's there. Having more people join and having that exposure to more people is going to be a lot harder for every sort of community, because everybody stick to the ones they already know. And I think that's one of the biggest things, because as much as people need it or like read something, they're gonna be a lot more hesitant to do it anymore. everyone after this?
Yeah, I think it's going to be intimidating to like walk into a room full of a lot of people that you don't know. You know, because right now so many of us are making decisions about who we interact with and what kind of public spaces we're going to, and limiting our exposure to new people and new places because we just, you know, aren't sure. And so I think like that factor, I am really interested to see like how that impacts programming for folks like Community Tampa Bay or Heard 'em Say, and you know, especially when you're dealing with young people, like you're not just addressing their concerns, but like now you have parents involved who, you know, might have opinions about wanting their young person like interacting with this whole new community of folks where, you know, it's hard to make a safety decision about like, is my young person at higher risk of catching coronavirus in this environment? Like, you know, and or whatever happens like post pandemic. You know, I think that's a real concern, and it's definitely one we've been kicking around. You know, how to adapt accordingly.
With, I think, because you are dealing with generally high schoolish students, because
Mm-hmm.
19, and having to deal with their parents, and now they also have to deal with school. How have you made sure, like, well, not made sure, how have you addressed, like, having your organization be a still active and a part of their everyday lives by also making sure that it isn't feeling stressful to them, as they also have online work and they're now dealing with a different lifestyle than they were pre-pandemic, and a lot more stress on them and not just them and their families. How have you, like, seen this affect your young humans, or how have you seen it, like how have you addressed it in your own?
Yeah, I think for us, it's just continuing the relationship building piece. So I've only had a couple of conversations with parents, and it was largely about limiting contact at the beginning of quarantine, and you know, wanting to make sure that we would be moving to virtual platforms so their young people weren't going in person. Um, you know, and I think we're going to start having conversations with more parents as we brainstorm, you know, on what timeline might we start meeting in person again. And, you know, we're still making some internal decisions about what that'll look like. But absolutely, I think our young people are even more stressed than they have been with assignments and the amount of hours that they spend on Zoom every day for school. You know, I think there has potentially been like an increase in like busy workload from teachers trying to accomplish, you know, tasks through maybe more worksheets or more, you know, assignments like that. And so actually April is National Poetry Writing Month. And we do a challenge called 30-30. So in the poetry community, that's writing one poem a day for 30 days. So at the end of April, you have 30 poems. And they can be short or long or whatever. And so for our young people, our slam coaches put together 30 writing prompts, one for each day of the month. And then we had some challenges for them to complete 3 full-length poems from, you know, some assortment of those prompts. And so I think for some of our young people, they communicated like, hey, I've got so much schoolwork going on. Like I wrote a few lines to this one today, or like today it was a 6-word story or a haiku, not a full length poem, which is totally valid. And for some of them, it was like, hey, this is a great escape from what's going on in my life that I don't want to like plug into. So like, let me write a full poem every day for 30 days because like it's a nice like escape into what I wish I was doing. So yeah, I think we have just stayed in touch and communicated and texted more throughout weeks to say like, you know, how's it going? What's your workload like today? And as we move forward, we're in the process of writing what we call group pieces or team pieces, where 2 and 3 poets write a poem together that they would then perform together. And so we're checking in on workloads about like, you know, how many of these do you feel like you can finish? Or like, what's your priority this week, next week? What do realistic deadlines look like, which takes a lot of communication. And then also brainstorming our digital strategies for how do we perform a group piece on virtual platforms where we can't physically be together in person, but like time lag of internet often prevents you from saying the same thing at the same time. So we've been doing a lot of brainstorming around that too.
I see a lot of like communication and like understanding and flexibility between your schedule and their schedule, which is like
Yes.
because having just like a set schedule, be like, oh, this worked this week, this will probably work next week. So knowing that it's very flexible time and things were going to change throughout this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're also making a lot of space for, like, you might not have had a busy day, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a heavy day. Depending on where your head and your heart are at and, what kind of mental health day you were having, that it's also completely valid that you didn't get work done, even though you didn't have a busy calendar schedule. Because, like, even if you didn't have a lot going on or you weren't technically like busy or productive, like it's still okay to say like, hey, I needed a day of rest, and like creating space for that too.
Allowing that space to be honest and be like, I'm sorry this, but and being like that's a valid thing if
Yeah,
it's a hard
yeah,
time.
exactly. I saw this really awesome meme, which is what I probably spend about half my time doing these days. But it said something to the effect of like, it's okay if you come out of this pandemic like a different person than you were when you went into it. And I think like that resonated with me in a way that, both as an individual as well as programmatically with Heard Him Say, like we've been doing so much reflecting on what are our real priorities. And I think sometimes getting so caught up in the pressure of like, here's all the things I need to accomplish, or here's all of the metrics I need to meet. This has been a really awesome time to reflect on how many of those feel really important. Do they feel like something that we need to continue to invest like energy in figuring out how to do virtually, or are we okay letting them go, even if they were, it was a long time thing that I did, but if it's not important anymore, then I don't need to hold on to it. um, Earlier this week I had a day where I was actually like busy again, to the point where I was like late to like 2 or 3 meetings in a row. And I was so stressed out, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this used to be what my average day to day was like. And like not having had that for a while and then having it again, I was like, whew, like I do not like the way this makes my body feel. Like my heart is racing, like I have that like heavy anxiety weight on me, and I'm like, I need to not do this again. And so it's like a good reality check on like how much busyness and things like that take over, and just reevaluating priorities.
Yeah, especially in a different time in a different space. I've been seeing a lot of things about that too, because a lot of people are like, oh, you have time, but also like acknowledging that you don't always have to be productive and be doing something if you aren't feeling that. It's okay and it's completely valid to like just watch Netflix all day or like do something like that, because you don't always have to be productive during this pandemic just because you are at home. It's okay to
That's
still.
so real. Yes, absolutely. I totally co-sign that. One of my favorite accounts to follow on Instagram is called the Nap Ministry. I think I might have gotten that wrong. But it's all about like rest being revolutionary, and like really digging into how rest is like helping to fight like the white supremacist patriarchy, and they do a much better job of phrasing it than I will. But I love that idea that like that pressure for busyness like is so tied into some of those systems too. So
Yeah, definitely. I'm liking that page on Instagram. Might have to follow. Okay, I hear it. But yeah,
definitely.
definitely that idea of just like you're still a person that has feelings even if you're still at home. Because I feel like a big associate thing, you're at home, you have nothing to do. But a lot of people don't take in assess the emotional like capacity people are going through, their living situations, and all of those emotional things that aren't being met anymore because it's such a different environment. And I think that, still running these communities that you run and like community Tampa Bay runs and having these things that are still constant in people's lives are very big important part, even if they always can't attend or they can't always attend the Zoom meetings or do the same types of challenges. It's still good to have constant in some people's lives. That's
Yeah, I totally agree. And so I think that's why my goal of Heard Him Say is like to create programming that stays present, without the pressure that you have to produce to like a certain minimum requirement in order to be valid here. And so I think so much more of our programming has shifted towards just making sure like people are okay and they feel loved and they feel affirmed and they feel valued for whatever they are capable of in this moment. And I think like that should still be at the center of our values, like when we leave quarantine world and find out what happens next. So that's definitely been an important lesson for us too.
I like that. I like that. I don't know. That kind of resonated with me what you just said. So I'm gonna think about that after this because
Yes, totally.
it's definitely like I think I can't word exactly what you said, but it like really resonated with me for a second there. And I was like, wait a minute. It echoed in my head, and I was like, whoa, wait. I think
Yes,
that's
I love it.
your mindset for your whole organization is very like you don't have to have a minimum to be valid. I think that is like a very good message in people's communities for them to have. So I really like
Yes.
that.
Yes. Well, and if nothing else, like it's a reminder to me daily because I know I need that reminder myself. Like as someone who's like very achievement like focused, I love being productive and I love accomplishing things. But at the same time, so like I think that even stems from just like me personally as a human, wanting to create space and say out loud that it's okay. And so like the more that we do that for Heard 'em Say, like the more it reminds me that that's true for me as a human too.
Reflecting onto yourself. Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so good, Liz. Oh, no.
Well, it's always so much easier to tell other people, like affirm other people with those kinds of messages. And always so much easier to like let that self-critic voice like inside of your head tell you that like you're the exception and like you don't get to do that. So I think pushing those messages like is a great way for it to resonate back to me too. Yeah.
I'm really like reflecting on myself now with it.
Yes, mission accomplished.
Well, that's mostly what I had because now I like the point where I'm like now I gotta think about like everything about my life for the next 10 hours from what is there anything else you'd like to say or like anything more messages?
Yeah, I guess just the last thing I'll plug is at the end of this month, on Friday, May 29th, we have our 13th anniversary show. So Heard 'em Say was established in 2007, and we're celebrating our 13th anniversary as an organization this year or this month. So Friday, May 29th, we're going to have a big event on Zoom. The details are going to be on our Instagram page. It's also our annual fundraiser. And so we're going to launch a ticket sale process that lets folks like pay what they can and donate what they can and still be a part of that awesome event. And so check out our Instagram page, heardem_say. Mark your calendars. And our host for the evening is going to be someone you might know, the infamous Sam Obeid. So your very own Community Tampa Bay program director is going to be there joining us. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. So starting around like 7:30 p.m. Again, details are going to be on Heard 'em Say's Instagram, and we will post ticket details tomorrow.
All right, Heard 'em Say Instagram. What's Sam's gonna be on? So many very special people. So exciting. Yes. I love it. Thank you for talking with me today. I have reached my existential moment of today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you for asking such incredible questions.
Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a great time talking to you today, and everyone should go support Heard 'em Say. Very good organization along with Community Tampa Bay. I'm really glad I talked to you about this. I'm going to look into your organization a lot more. Everyone go support the 13th anniversary.
Yes. And
thank you so much, Liz. I had a good time talking to you today.
All right. Thank you so much, India. You are doing fabulous work with the Creating Space Conversations, and I look forward to catching the next one.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.